On April 8, 1945, as the Allied forces advanced deeper into the Thuringia region of central Germany, a tip from local residents caught the attention of the U.S. 91st Infantry Division. Suspicious activity at the Merkers salt mine. A quiet area, seemingly unremarkable, yet hiding a secret that could change the financial landscape of the world. Deep underground, at a depth of 640 meters, a network of salt tunnels had become the hiding place for bloody secrets. The American soldiers never expected that when they broke through a meter-thick brick wall and shone their lights into the space inside, they would discover one of the largest war treasures ever found. The golden light from thousands of gold bars reflected off the walls, shining as brightly as flashes of the past. There they found a mountain of priceless assets. 8,198 gold bars, 55 crates of solid gold ingots, hundreds of sacks of gold coins from across occupied Europe, and over 5 billion Reichsmarks in paper money. But these were not just material goods. They were traces of a sophisticated financial system that the Nazi regime had built to turn plunder into legitimate financial tools, continuing to serve their war machine. However, this discovery was not just a military victory. It was a bloody treasure, the result of millions of people dying in the genocide. Those who were exploited and robbed of their assets to finance the ambitions of the Nazis. These gold bars were not just precious metals. They were the story of millions of innocent victims who became tools for a criminal regime. At that time, the U.S. Army had little time to reflect on the story behind these gold bars. The pressure of handing over this area to the Soviets as part of the Yalta Agreement made the situation urgent. Merkers was not an easy target to conquer, and the U.S. Army had only 72 hours to move the treasure out of the mine, across roads devastated by bombs and artillery. An emergency military transport operation began immediately. 10 2.5-ton CCKW trucks continuously ran for 3 days and nights, crossing bombed-out roads to deliver this enormous gold treasure to Frankfurt, where it would be protected from Soviet invasion. The photographs of Generals Dwight Eisenhower, Omar Bradley, and George Patton standing among the gold not only symbolized military victory, but also portrayed another battle, the fight over dirty money, the record of the largest financial crime in history. However, Merkers was just one of many Nazi asset storage points. The bigger question is, how did these gold bars end up there? And why, while some of the assets had been transported out, did most of the gold and other valuables remain hidden or disappear into the shadows? How much of this was turned into legitimate financial instruments, patents, or even used for intelligence operations during the Cold War? To understand this better, we must explore the financial strategy of the Nazis. This was not just an ordinary looting campaign, but a well-designed financial system aimed at ensuring that no matter how the war ended, Germany's assets would survive and continue to feed their war machine and build their empire. Merkers was not just a storage place for gold. It was part of a larger strategy created by Nazi leaders to turn war assets into profitable instruments after the war. The Nazis were not just ordinary looters. They had a complex financial system built with meticulous strategy. To understand where the gold went, we need to examine how they converted war assets into legal tools that helped sustain the war. Under the management of Walther Funk, the Reichsbank divided the gold into two categories: monetary gold and non-monetary gold. Monetary gold. This refers to the gold bars seized from the central banks of occupied countries, such as Austria, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Non-monetary gold. This includes personal assets from those affected by the war, such as wedding rings, watches, and other belongings. At the facilities of the Degussa Company, a process was implemented to refine and turn these assets into legal gold. Personal items were melted down and combined with raw gold bars, creating standard gold bars weighing 12.5 kilograms with high purity. These gold bars were not only physically refined, but also stamped with counterfeit Reichsbank markings, making them appear as if they had existed before the war. However, gold only holds value if it can be used to purchase the materials needed for war. This is where the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, played a crucial role. Even though countries were at war through the BIS, banks from different nations maintained relationships, ensuring that the flow of money never stopped. Switzerland, remaining neutral in the war, accepted gold from the Reichsbank and exchanged it for Swiss francs, a strong foreign currency that could be used to purchase important war materials. This exchange was not coincidental. It was part of a sophisticated financial system. Even under siege and attack, the Nazis managed to maintain asset circulation, ensuring the flow of money was uninterrupted. These mechanisms not only protected the Nazis' assets, but also ensured the survival of their war machine, even in the post-war period. This financial system not only safeguarded war assets, but also helped lay the foundation for future international financial institutions. The BIS was not just an intermediary bank. It was a key factor in helping Germany maintain control over its war assets. These connections, combined with the international financial system, had long-lasting consequences for the global economy, as these war assets were integrated into the global financial flow without immediate detection. Why did the Nazis take such a huge risk in smuggling gold to neutral countries like Portugal, Sweden, and Spain throughout the war? The answer lies in an important military term: wolfram. Without wolfram, the Nazi war machine could not have been sustained for long. Wolfram is an essential component in manufacturing armor-piercing shells, the key factor that enabled Germany's Tiger and Panther tanks to face off against Allied weaponry. Moreover, wolfram was also crucial in metal-cutting tool manufacturing, necessary for the production of weapons and military machinery. Portugal, a neutral country but with a large wolfram mine, was the primary supplier of wolfram to Europe during the war. However, what is noteworthy is that the country refused to accept Reichsmarks, as they had lost their value. Instead, they only accepted gold bars, the only foreign currency allowed in exchange for this crucial war material. To maintain production of legendary tanks like the Tiger and Panther, the Nazis had to establish special wolfram routes. Gold from Berlin was transported via armored trains, sneaking through occupied territories, or, in extreme cases, shipped by U-boat submarines, slipping through the Royal Navy's strict blockade to reach Lisbon, a key transit point. These submarine trips were a symbol of logistical sophistication, proving that even in the most dangerous moments, critical resources still had to be protected and moved safely. Each gold bar leaving the Reichsbank was a price paid for Nazi military operations. These gold shipments were not just the movement of assets, they carried immense strategic weight. These shipments ensured that the flow of essential materials would not be interrupted, helping maintain Nazi combat capabilities. Each gold bar essentially transformed into thousands of armor-piercing shells, hundreds of tanks, and their wreckage, becoming an integral part of the war effort. Therefore, much of the Nazi gold never truly disappeared into underground bunkers or secret asset storage. Instead, it was consumed directly on the battlefields, in the form of artillery shells, burning tanks, and the wounds that soldiers suffered. Gold became firepower. And this firepower not only sparked the war, but extended it for at least 2 more years. 2 years that the Nazis needed to maintain their grip on the relentless conflict. At the end of 1944, when victory seemed impossible, Nazi strategy shifted from sustaining the war to preserving power. The Alpine fortress, Alpine Festung plan, was implemented with the goal not only of protecting assets, but also of safeguarding the regime's power in a new and form. The idea was simple yet bold. Instead of keeping the gold reserves in Berlin, which was vulnerable to attack, The SS units were ordered to scatter the assets into deep caves, old salt mines, and the cold waters of high-altitude lakes in Austria and Bavaria. Among the storage sites, Lake Toplitz became the hiding place for some of the most important assets. It was not only a place to hide gold, but also a repository for counterfeit money from Operation Bernhard, lists of secret bank accounts, and other important documents. These assets were dropped to the bottom of the lake, where thick organic sediment and the SS's self-destruction mechanisms created a natural fortress, resisting any efforts to uncover the buried secrets. However, Lake Toplitz was not the only place that contained valuable war assets. Some of the assets were not buried in the lake's depths, but were instead used to fund escape routes, known as rat lines. Routes that helped individuals linked to the Nazi regime flee the war-torn areas. Through monasteries in Italy and assistance from intermediary organizations, the gold was melted down into smaller, compact items that could be easily carried or hidden within relief shipments. These shipments not only contained humanitarian aid, but also carried illegal assets, used to support post-war activities, laying the foundation for networks that helped individuals involved in war crimes. An important report, published in 1998 by Stuart Eisenstadt, who investigated stolen assets from World War II, revealed that a large block of assets worth 350 million Swiss francs from the Ustash regime, Croatia, had disappeared along a route from Zagreb, Rome, Buenos Aires. This gold was used to help figures like Adolf Eichmann and Josef Mengele establish new lives in South America while evading justice. An important report, published in 1998 by Stuart Eisenstadt, who investigated stolen assets from World War II, revealed that a large block of assets worth 350 million Swiss francs from the Ustash regime, Croatia, had disappeared along a route from Zagreb, Rome, Buenos Aires. This gold was used to help figures like Adolf Eichmann and Josef Mengele establish new lives in South America while evading justice. Gray gold is a concept rarely mentioned when discussing Nazi assets. While not a metal, gray gold refers to intangible assets, the power of knowledge and technology, assets that, even if seized, cannot be erased. The Nazis realized that while gold bars were very valuable, they could still be confiscated. However, knowledge and technology held long-term value, were difficult to destroy, and could be reused. In the final months of the war, the Nazis quietly launched a campaign to convert the value of gold into intellectual property. This was gray gold, an asset that would protect Germany's economy and military in the future. When the Allied forces entered the factories of major conglomerates like IG Farben, Krupp, and Siemens, they did not find gold. Instead, they discovered tons of technical files, blueprints, research documents, and important patents. These documents were considered intangible assets of great value, and the Allies seized over 340,000 German patents, a massive number regarded as the largest intellectual theft in history. These assets not only had immediate value, but also had long-lasting effects on the global industrial sector. Before the war ended, German companies had prepared by transferring important patents, such as those for synthetic rubber, jet technology, petrochemicals, and pharmaceuticals, to subsidiaries or partners in Switzerland and the US, helping them survive and continue to profit in the post-war world. The actual value of gray gold was immense. According to estimates at the time, the value of these patents could have reached 10 billion US dollars, a figure far greater than the total value of the gold the U.S. Army found in Merkers. It was this intangible asset that laid the foundation for West Germany's economic miracle in the 1950s. When Nazi-era technologies and inventions were transferred to major corporations, helping West Germany's economy recover strongly after the war. Nazi money did not disappear after the regime collapsed. Instead, It was reinvested into modern production lines under new, legal, and reputable corporate names. These technologies not only helped Germany overcome post-war difficulties, but also contributed to the country's rise, making it one of Europe's leading economies in the 1950s. However, gray gold not only brought economic benefits to West Germany, but also left a big question. Could these technological achievements have been developed in a peaceful environment? Or was it the devastation of war that pushed the world into a new industrial revolution, with the price being the suffering and consequences of a totalitarian regime? After 1945, the world was quickly divided by the Iron Curtain, and the priorities of the Allied nations shifted. From focusing on punishing the Nazis and seeking justice for the victims of their regime, the nations transitioned to a new strategy: building a front against the Soviet Union as the Cold War gradually took shape. To manage the enormous war assets, the Tripartite Gold Commission was established in 1946 in Brussels. Its mission was to recover and return the gold seized from the occupied countries to their central banks. Over its 52 years of operation, 1946-1998, the TGC returned a total of 329 tons of gold to 15 countries. While this is a large figure, it only represented the tip of the iceberg. However, there was an unacceptable paradox. While state gold was prioritized for restitution, the personal assets of millions of Holocaust victims were nearly forgotten. Only about 1% of personal assets were actually returned to their rightful owners or heirs. These assets were not only of material value, but also symbols of the suffering endured by those in the genocide, who had been stripped of their lives and property. Western countries, especially the United States and the United Kingdom, were concerned that overly stringent investigations into Swiss banks or German corporations could destabilize the economies of the Allied nations during the Cold War. As a result, these war asset stores were buried in political agreements aimed at protecting the stability of Western economies in the face of Soviet opposition. Some of the recovered gold and foreign currencies never appeared in the public records. Instead, they became black funds used for intelligence operations throughout the Cold War. The Gehlen Organization Network, the predecessor of modern German intelligence, and America's Operation Gladio, used these old SS war asset caches to fund undercover agents in Eastern Europe. This is an example of converting war assets into financial tools, helping maintain the power of Western powers in their confrontation with the Soviet Union. The Nazis' gold, once a war tool, became a funding mechanism for anti-communist operations in the shadows of the 20th century. Once again, finance and power were used to preserve influence, while justice for the victims of the fascist regime was still delayed. This truth is not only a part of financial history, but also a reminder of the injustice in the post-war world. War criminals not only escaped punishment, but were also protected and funded by Western powers while they confronted the Soviet Union during the Cold War. As we entered the 21st century, the legends of the gold train resurfaced, particularly with the famous search in Wałbrzych, Poland, in 2015. Treasure hunters claimed that ground-penetrating radar had detected a 100-meter-long armored train deep within an abandoned tunnel. This story captured the attention of the media and the public, fueling hopes that the Nazi gold treasure was still hidden somewhere beneath the earth. However, modern science provided a different answer. Experts from AGH University in Krakow, Poland, used magnetometers and resistivity measurement techniques to determine that there was no train. The anomalies recorded by the radar were merely natural geological structures or collapsed tunnels over time. There was no treasure hidden in there, only faint traces of a legend. So, why haven't any more large treasures been found? The truth is, gold in the 21st century is no longer buried underground. Today's investigators do not rely solely on physical searches, but also use algorithmic trails, numerical signs recorded in old bank transactions. Financial experts and investigators can trace these trails, realizing that most of the gold has been broken down and integrated into the global financial system through millions of small transactions over the past 80 years. Now, investigators use digital tools and complex data analysis to track the dispersion of lost assets in banking transactions, anonymous investments, and even in underground financial channels. In this way, what was once physical gold has now become an inseparable part of the modern financial system. Physically, the remaining gold in lakes like toplets or in collapsed underground bunkers is no longer in large quantities. However, their symbolic value remains immense. They are not only lost war assets, but also the last material evidence of a power structure that tried to buy back the future using the wealth of the deceased. These assets are not just relics of a dark era, but also proof of the continued influence of financial powers from the past, still silently affecting the world today. The treasure is no longer in mines or lakes. It is dissolved into the global system, protected and maintained through financial transactions, anonymous accounts, and intangible values known to few. In the modern world, gold is not just a precious metal. It has transformed into an intangible asset: power, influence, and control. To summarize, from 1939 to 1945, the Nazis seized gold worth between 600 and 850 million US dollars, equivalent to about 11 to 15 billion US dollars at today's exchange rate. But where did most of this gold go? 1/3 was turned into war materials like wolfram, iron, and steel, essential materials for weapon production. 1/3 was returned to the nations through the Tripartite Commission. The remaining third, the most mysterious part, was converted into intangible assets. This gold became patents, shares in secret companies, black funds for intelligence, or was hidden in dormant bank accounts in Switzerland. The Nazis' gold did not disappear. It merged into our modern world. It is present in the antibiotics we use, in the jet engines we fly, and in the banks where we deposit money. This serves as a reminder of a profound truth. In war, finance is also a battlefield. And gold bars have no conscience. They only serve those who own them. Justice for the victims of the fascist regime came too late and is often symbolic at best. Gold still exists, albeit reminted with a new stamp, but the truth about its bloody origins can never be erased. Thank you for joining me on this journey to explore this dark treasure. If you found this content useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next in-depth historical analysis. Wishing you a wonderful day, and see you next time.